colliding, sliding, and separating plates. Earth's crust, along with the rigid uppermost part of the mantle, is called the lithosphere. The lithosphere is 18 to 120 kilometers, or 11 to 75 miles thick. It covers Earth's interior and is broken into pieces called tectonic plates. The rocks that make up these plates grind, collide, move past one another, and break and spread apart as they sit on a slowly flowing, waxy asthenosphere. The place where edges of plates meet is called a plate boundary. At some plate boundaries, the plates collide and mountains and trenches form. At other plate boundaries, their plates try to slide past one another. When this happens, energy builds up in the rock as it compresses or twists. When the force between the plates becomes too great, the rock breaks or ruptures and an earthquake may occur. Lithospheric plates can be either continental or oceanic. Continental plates contain Earth's continents. They are thick but less dense than oceanic plates. Oceanic plates, which occur under the world's oceans, are thin and dense because of their composition. In general, these plates come together to form one of three types of boundaries: convergent boundaries, divergent boundaries, or transform boundaries. Convergent boundaries. Typically, when two continental plates collide at what is called the convergent plate boundary, their edges crumple. So imagine crumpling paper and uplift to form mountains. This is what happens when the Indian-Australian plate collided with the Eurasian plate millions of years ago. Their collision formed, and is still forming, the Himalayas. When a continental plate collides with an oceanic plate, it is a different story. The dense oceanic plate sinks and slides under the continental plate in a process called subduction, as shown in the illustration below. An older, colder oceanic plate can also slide under a younger, warmer oceanic plate, and the old plate subducts deep into the asthenosphere. As you might expect, the cold oceanic plate is denser than the warm one. When an oceanic plate moves under the plate, the bending of the sinking plates create trenches or deep valleys in the ocean floor right at the plate boundary. As the oceanic plate sinks deeper, it is subjected to heat and pressure. As the temperature rises, the subducting plates releases water and facilitates melting. Rising melt travels towards Earth and forms volcanoes. So you can see a photo here of the convergent plate. So when oceanic and continental plates collide, the oceanic plate slides under, right here, the dense continental plate. The Andes Mountains in South America formed this way. Divergent boundaries. Divergent boundaries or spreading ridges form when hot rock flowing under a plate causes the surface to thin and break. When an oceanic plate breaks apart, the rising mantle heats the crust and causes it to expand and bulge upward to form a ridge or mountain-like landform. The new oceanic crust forms as the rock cools and contracts. The mantle pushes more rock between the plates and continues to form more oceanic crust in a landform called an oceanic ridge. Divergent boundaries can also form within a continental plate. In location where the continental plate is thin, the rising mantle can cause a crack or rift to form between the two continental plates. Melted rock flows into open spaces between the thick, broken plates, creating a new landform called a rift valley. In this photo here, you can see the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So the oceanic ridge continues to push the continents apart. It hasn't stopped, and it probably never will, but here's the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. You can see where it flows throughout the Earth. And a transform boundary. So sometimes a plate fractures in a way that allows two pieces to slide past one another without creating new crust. This is called a transform boundary. This type of boundary is associated with earthquakes and strike-slip faults you'll read about during the next investigation. You can see a photo here of some transform boundaries occurring. So photo A, when two plates move apart, molten rock pushes up into the space between them. Like hot air that rises above cold air, melted rock inside Earth rises because it is less dense than the cooler, solid rock around it. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge and Eastern African Rift were formed this way. And then for illustration B, when plates slide past each other, the surface features may be altered. The San Andreas Fault is a transform boundary separating the North American plate from the Pacific plate. So you can see that A is more of a pull, so they're pulling apart from each other, and B is more of a slide, so they slide past each other.